In Revelation chapter 8, the first trumpet blew. Third of the trees were destroyed. Fire and blood fell to the earth. Fire mixed with blood. And third of the trees were destroyed, and a third of the grass was destroyed. Okay. If you remember, the grass, included in the grass would be wheat, rye, barley, the grains, rice. So it would have a huge effect on the food supply. And have you know, when I first came down here 30 years ago, I had 7 acres of wood. I'd go out and try to hunt for a tree to use for firewood. And I would have to look for a while to find one, and a lot of times I couldn't find one that was dying, but it would maybe be off color and look like it wasn't healthy. So I'd use it. Now there's trees everywhere are dead. Trees are dying like crazy. Look at the stumps around the church here. There's stumps all over the place. And if you look at the tops of the trees, maybe a third of the trees in the yard out here, around here, the tops are dead. It's probably a prelude to this whole thing. If you go to Matthew chapter 24, it says there will be birth pains, or there will be labor pains before all this begins to happen, and we'll start to see indications of it. And I think we're starting to see that. When I was a kid, when they started picking the crops in the fall, like this year, they were just using up the grain that had been in storage 2 years ago. And they had a full year in storage. Now, right now, when we start picking grain in the fall, the bins are empty. So we have lost that 1 year reserve that we used to have 100 years ago when I was a kid. And we have traded it. I mean, the situation is looking desperate. How was breakfast?
Really, really good.
No, at the thing, at Huron. Did you make the?
Oh, yes. It did turn out really good.
Okay.
We raised $263 for the walk for Alzheimer's.
But that is, we're starting to see a prelude of all this. We're starting to see everything go downhill. We're starting to see the crops fail.
The number of buzzards, the number of vultures anymore has multiplied by like.
Oh yeah, we're gonna pick that up with chapter 16. There's going to be a big battle, and the vultures are going to feast on kings. It says they'll feast on kings and princes. An amazing thing is happening worldwide. Usually buzzards and vultures have a surviving chick every 2 years. Chicks have a kind of a lousy diet. A lot of bacon. But usually a buzzard chick would survive about every other year. They lay like 4 eggs, and one of the 8 eggs would survive every 2 years. Okay. Now they have a 50% success rate, and the vultures and the buzzards, the population is exploding worldwide.
And you're not allowed to shoot them, right?
No, you're not sure.
Right.
It's not illegal till you get caught. I'm with you.
You can't hit them with a car though, I've done that.
I seen one go through a semi windshield and out the back windshield, and there was
That would not be good.
I would die by that.
But
Plastered my windshield.
we'll look at that later on in this when it talks about the birds of prey that will clean up the mess after the great battle. And we see, biologically, we see all those birds of prey being born and surviving and getting ready for that death. That'll be interesting when we get to it. What does the fire and the blood represent?
How about you tell us?
Huh?
How about you tell us?
Usually when you find fire and blood in the Bible, it's a cleansing operation. Fire fell upon Sodom and Gomorrah, and that whole den of iniquity was cleansed. The blood of Jesus Christ is our cleansing agent. And so while the world is saying, oh, woe is me, this is terrible, God is saying, I'm going to clean up this mess. And it's a mess. You know, when I was a kid, there were two things that were sacred: children and churches. Even the worst guy in town, the biggest derelict in town, wouldn't touch a kid and wouldn't touch church property. There was some respect for those two things. All that's gone now. You better, when we take my grandkids to the mall, they got these little backpacks with a leash on the back of them, and we keep our hands on the leashes, because a lot of mall, if you go up to a mall around Chicago, Gary, up in the northern corner of the state, they have panic buttons that you can push, and the mall shuts down every door, automatically locks, and you can't get out until they find a kid. My sister-in-law was in one of them one time, and 6 hours, nobody left the mall until they found the kid. And it's a terrible world when children are not sacred or special anymore. It's a horrible world. You know, me, I'm not innocent, but children are. And when sometimes I get what I deserve, but you know, children ought to be sacred. And we don't live in that world anymore. It's gone. Well, this is a cleansing operation. Also, as we go through these, you're going to see a very similar thing happening to what happened in Egypt back when Moses was trying to get Pharaoh to let the people go. The blood, the water turning to blood, a lot of these judgments that are being brought upon the earth during this situation, a lot of them are identical to the judgments that were brought upon Egypt for the torment that they caused the Israelites. The Pharaohs caused the Israelites. So nothing's changed much. God cleans things up. We go back to being bad. God cleans things up again. We go back to being bad. We're good for a while. We're bad for a long time, and then God has to step in. And the bottom line is, it's all our fault. We don't have to act like heathens. We just do. Okay, 8 and 9.
Chapter 8, 8 and 9?
8 and 9.
8 and 9.
Chapter 8.
Okay. The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain all ablaze was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea turned into blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. The third angel sounded his trumpet.
8 and 9.
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't see.
Thank you. Okay, what's this sound like?
Third is very popular.
A volcano.
A volcano. Could be a volcano. And remember when we had that number 7, the level 7 earthquake out in the middle of the Indian Sea and the tsunami that hit the shores? Remember the damage that did? What would the damage of a volcano erupting and pushing up out of the sea, what kind of damage would that cause? I mean, that level 7 earthquake compared to a volcano would be peanuts. There would be a huge amount of destruction. Another thing is that it could be, remember, John is trying to describe something that he has never seen before, doesn't have a language to describe. He would probably have the word volcano. I mean, they were known at this time. This could also be a nuclear exchange. If a nuclear bomb went off and that mushroom cloud was to come up out of the sea, how would John describe that and the result of it? Could be either one of them. The Bible's not that clear on it, but something disastrous is going to happen. And John saw it, and it's going to have a tremendous effect upon the seas. A third of the ships will be destroyed. A third of the animals in the sea will be destroyed. It's going to be a huge disruption. Okay. And remember, what are these? Are they judgments? Or are they warnings? They're warnings. What happens if we heed the warning?
You heed the warning and admit that Jesus is your Savior, and then you go to heaven.
Okay. What would happen? What would happen with trumpet 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7?
They wouldn't sound.
Huh?
They wouldn't sound.
They wouldn't have. They wouldn't have. Is there any precedent set for that in the Bible?
Yes.
What?
When Jonah.
Yep. Exactly right. Remember, Jonah said, "Go up and preach against him," and he went up and he preached. He said, 40 days, and you're going to be destroyed. And the king said, "I'm proclaiming a 40-day fast." And for you and the animals, God saw the king's heart was true, and it said he repented of his action. He turned the other way. He said, "I'm not going to do it. I see repentance. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to back off this." And for 125 years, Nineveh lived in peace with Israel and the people around it, and nothing happened. Then they went back to their old ways, and what happened? God dropped the hammer on them. You know, we don't have to suffer through this. If we would say, "Whoa, I see God's action in this, and He's trying to send me a warning, and I'm going to change my ways," God will instantly stop the action. Do you think that's going to happen?
Okay.
No. All 7 trumpets are going to blow because mankind just, the longer they're on earth, the worse they get. It happened in the time of Noah, and it's happening on our time. Things just get worse by the day. 10 and 11.
And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp, and it fell upon the third part of the rivers and upon the mountains and waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood, and the third part of the waters became wormwood, and many men died in the waters because they were made bitter.
Okay, what do you think this is? Blazing like a torch.
Meteor.
Huh?
Meteor.
A meteor? Or a missile?
Wormwood, wasn't that a Beatles song or something? There was a song called Wormwood.
I don't think it was the Beatles. It might have been hard rock.
Josh, now you gotta get another plate of food.
No, I already had 2. I'm good.
Even if it was a missile or something, how would he know that its name was Wormwood?
Well, wormwood means bitter. When he said wormwood, wormwood was a very bitter herb. And I forget what they gave it to you for stomach problems or something. But it had to be masked inside something. And
That's the key ingredient in drink that all of the artists used to drink. Absinthe.
in Pepsi.
Absinthe.
Oh, absinthe. Absolutely.
Supposed to make you see visions.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
We did one
That's
the other
like this
day.
painting.
We get it for
Absinthe is kind of like a brandy whiskey thing, and it's got that wormwood thing in it. I've never tried it, but it tastes like licorice. It's got an anise taste to it.
Nieces. Nieces.
Ananias.
Anise.
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 That's in there somewhere.
But it has a licorice taste to it, and it causes hallucinations, or it causes you to see.
Must have been what Picasso was drinking.
It says it's like a great star blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the waters. I kind of lean, and it's not clear, we don't know for sure, but I kind of lean toward the missile thing. Because what are the results of a nuclear explosion? What happens to the water?
It's poisoned.
It becomes radioactive. The dust from the explosion settles on the water and is carried for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of miles. A lot of times when they want to find out how old something is that is found, they'll do a radioactivity test on it to see if it was before or after we started using nuclear bombs, because the residue is left to this day. They can tell, well, it was this year, or well, it was that year, because the years right after the bomb, the radioactivity in the water and in the soil is higher than it is 20 years later, 40 years later, or 100 years later. Okay? So they age paintings that way. They can tell whether the painting was a 1900 painting or if it was a counterfeit used with paint that was made after 1946 when we blew up the bombs. And they can tell if the painting is legitimate or not, simply by seeing what the radioactivity in the paint on canvas was. If there's no radioactivity there, or just normal radioactivity, and there's always been some, because we have uranium in the soil. And when the volcanoes explode, some of that uranium gets in the atmosphere. And they know what the levels have been for years and years and years. And if that canvas has paint on it that has a 1965 radioactivity level in it, then they know it's a forgery. Okay. The radioactivity would definitely affect the water and would kill a lot of, many people would be killed, would die. And the waters, from the waters that become bitter. The aftermath after, there was a movie about it, and about 10 years ago maybe, and it was really an ugly movie. But I read afterward that they wanted to do it accurately, and they decided that no one would watch past the first half of the movie. Everybody would turn it off. So they kind of dummied it down a little bit, because it's going to be ugly. If Iran does hit that button, or if Russia does hit that button, millions of people are going to die, and tens of millions of people are going to die after the explosion by the results that happen.
Was that movie called The Day After? The name of that movie, is that called The Day After?
Might have been.
I think I couldn't remember if that was the name of it. I think I saw that.
Yeah, I saw it. It was maybe 10, 12 years ago.
So the volcanoes and the missiles and all that stuff that's happening, that's killing people, millions of people will die. Well, is that just going to be just the non-believers dying? Or will that be Christians, believers, and non-believers?
If I'm in Chicago on the day that the bomb hits, I'm probably going to get to see Jesus face to face. And, you know, a lot of people say that's not fair, but what have I done about any of it? What have I done to stop any of this? What have I done to speak out against child abuse? What have I done to stop abortion? You know, we as Christians kind of hide in our churches and don't want to make a splash, don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But because we didn't stand up and say, no, this is wrong, we're not going to buy it, we now have it, don't we? How did one woman take prayer at a public school when at that point in time, over 80% of the people in this nation said they were a Christian? We would have filled, we should have filled Washington, D.C. up with outrage. We should have threatened every one of our politicians with their jobs. We should have told them, if you don't do something about this, you're going home on the next election and you're not coming back. 80% of the people in this country said, I'm a Christian. One woman complained about prayer in public schools. They took it out and we did nothing. And we got what we bought. You know, if I'm in Chicago when the bomb falls and the judgment gets me and I get to go to heaven that day, I'm not going to have a complaint, because what did I do to stop? How am I going to say this is unfair? I didn't do anything about it. 12, just 12.
The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark. A third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night.
What would cause it?
That
Comic down thing.
Ash. Ash.
Ash, dust, and that. Maybe from the volcano that we've just seen. Okay. Also from a nuclear exchange. That would cause it. Or the asteroid. If an asteroid was to hit the Earth, there would be a huge crater, and that dust would go up in the air. And there would be a shadow over the Earth, reflecting the sun away from the surface of the Earth. What effect's that going to have on the crops?
Kill him.
Take away a third of the light, what's going to happen to the crops?
Kill.
A lot of crops are day sensitive. Onions will not bulb until the day is 13 days long, and they stop bulbing when the day stops being 13 days long. Long day onions are 14 hours. They need 14 hours of sunlight from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And they will not bulb until they get that 14 hours. That's why when you buy your onion sets, you have to buy sets specific to the area. We are right on the line between long day and medium day onion. If we have a stormy, cloudy spring and early summer, and you buy the long day onions, they won't bulb. If you buy the medium onions, they probably would. But a lot of our crops will not make fruit unless they have a specific amount of daylight. And when that specific amount of daylight is no longer available, that plant dies. It's done. Even if the blooms get pollinated, the fruit will not mature. Now, if you take a third of the daylight out, the effects of that are going to be catastrophe. That's why we need to be getting ready for this. Have you noticed that all the advice, all the advertisements for dehydrated food by year's worth, by 2 years worth, there's all kinds of ads for that now. Why do you think it is? I think even the unbelievers are starting to see that things are not going the way, not headed in a good direction. You don't have to be a believer to see that things are getting tough out there. For the first time ever, I was going to do a salsa for one of our church dinners. And I drove down to Walmart Jasper because their fruits and vegetables are always better. I could not find a plum tomato in the rack. There were, in the vegetable and fruit rack, there were whole bins that were empty. And I asked the people, I said, is there anything, do you have any plum tomatoes in the bag? No, we're all out. We've been out for 2 days. That's not good. When a big grocery store like Walmart can't get what they need to fill the bins on the shelves, we ought to be asking ourselves, what's going on here? This isn't right. I mean, we can fly them in from Peru in 8 hours. Why would the shelves be empty? What's going on here? And you know, God sending these signals, and He's saying, we need to get ready, we need to get prepared. Just like He sent Joseph and Pharaoh the signals. And Nebuchadnezzar, He sent him a vision. And He's always done that to take care of His people. And then we have an obligation. Once we learn, once we realize that something isn't right, it's our obligation to do so. All right, we're going to stop there.